Richard Feynman famously said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." The very world of science and research is dramatically shifting with the emergence of generative artificial intelligence. With Google's NotebookLM as well as many other tools, have we suddenly unlocked a new power of explanation and learning?
Welcome to the Grand Challengers Podcast, a show about inspiring individuals who are stepping up to tackle the global challenges that our world is facing in their own unique ways.
This is a special mini-series on Google's NotebookLM, featuring previous guests from the show and insights into the potential and perils of generative AI in science and research.
Join us on not only this little experiment, but also some deeper dives into key topics we have covered on the show so far.
From urban nature-based solutions, climate change, urban planning, ecology, livability, and even perspectives on AI in our urban environment as well.
AI is here to stay, accessing our vast collection of human knowledge, summarizing and synthesizing it, and presenting us with generated words, images, videos, voices, and much more. So join me, Peter Marcus Bach, and my guest on today's episode, Denise Mitrano, on this journey as we explore how well AI can explain the intricate science of micro and nanoplastics to scientists, the general public, and children. Please enjoy. Welcome back to the show, Denise.
Thanks for inviting me back. I'm glad I'm allowed.
Well, your episode is like one of the most downloaded episodes. So, and it was a really great episode that taught me a lot about microplastics, because everyone talks about microplastics. So hearing it from the expert, I think really opened my eyes on the topic. And we did the last one about a year ago in summer, and now we're close to winter, not in Zurich, but in Lausanne.
Yeah, it's been a nice big change. I mean, moving across Switzerland has been interesting. First, language difference, of course, but also, new location, always interesting for a fresh start to bring out new ideas and new things in life.
But still a city on the lake, so I guess some things don't change.
This is true. Although, of course, a bigger lake and also more impressive mountain views, I have to say. Nothing against Zurich. The views here, are
Actually,
not too bad.
That's true. Lake Geneva is quite massive. I have to check the map and compare them in terms of size, being the map nerd that I am. But how's the cycling around here? Just to, hark back to your episode.
Yes, I do quite a lot of cycling. So I cycle to work every day, which is also a nice change from Zurich. Before I was living close enough to walk to work, which is positive, but at least I get a few more kilometers in now. And here, being so close to the real high Alps, I get to do a lot of mountain passes and really being out in nature. So really enjoy it.
Lots of uphills and downhills.
Yes, exactly.
Nothing flat.
more uphills and downhills. And actually, everyone told me that Lausanne is too hilly that I wouldn't be able to bike around town. And I was like, it'll be fine. But actually, it is much hillier than Zurich.
But you generally like, hold my beer.
Yeah, well, maybe.
But I guess the background of that will be a mystery for now. And we'll definitely have to cover that when we get you on for part 2 of the main episode. Because that's not why we're here today. We're actually here to do a little experiment.
Woohoo!
So listeners, welcome back to the mini-series where we subject a large language model to try and explain, well, in the first episodes, it was my work, but now it's work from various guests across the show back to us to see how well and, well, how dangerous AI could be in the coming future. Are you ready for that?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So on this mini-series, we take Google's NotebookLM and we use it to generate a podcast episode. So NotebookLM is a tool built upon Gemini 2.5, which is Google's large language model. And it's been, marketed now and well established now as a tool for learning, for, helping you as a personalized AI research assistant. So you can upload different sources and it gives you instant insights, almost conversing it into a chatbot of your own based on what you give it. Optimized for less hallucination than many conventional models. And provides clear citations for its work. So that's something that we always want from AI tools, to make sure that they give us the sources of their information as well. But since the last episodes, which has been a while, it's been updated with many different aspects. And that includes being able to generate different types of podcast summaries, not just the deep dives that we've been covering on the show so far. Although on today's episode, we will do a deep dive, but along certain lines, which I'll cover shortly. But it also does things like video overviews, and it creates a lot more useful summaries in different forms like mind maps, FAQs, and so on, study guides as well of the material that you give it. And that in, I can't remember how many languages, but a lot of languages. So on this mini-series, we've subjected it so far to many different experiments, from simple summaries in the first episode to throwing so many sources at it in some of the later episodes, as well as trying to prompt the AI to give us completely nonsensical outputs to show its perils, but also playing broken telephone in the last episode that we released a few months ago with this particular tool. And it stood its ground pretty well. But there's one experiment that I always wanted to do with NotebookLM, and I thought your work would be the perfect topic to subject NotebookLM to this experiment.
Sounds ominous.
Well, before we get into that and the details, what's your experience with AI? How have you used it? What kinds of tools do you use?
Yeah, so I don't have a very deep experience with AI. I still actually like writing myself a lot, and I enjoy the writing process. So I'm not using it as a tool to outsource my writing when I'm actually creating new manuscripts or different types of work that I have to do. In terms of generation, I have found it useful to maybe make titles or to decrease abstracts to be able to fit into a certain word limit. Found that pretty helpful. I haven't used it as much for summarizing, but maybe as like an advanced Google search is mostly how I've been using it. But I'd be also interested to see, if my advanced Google search is actually really giving me the correct information. I haven't tested it so well. Working with a lot of students, I know that they're very keen on using AI to maybe make some of these shortcuts, or hopefully using them also to learn. I think some of the danger in that comes from if you don't know how to research yourself and also how to write yourself, that you may not be able to learn the tools well, and then you won't be able to write as well in the future.
Actually, on the point of writing, I definitely agree. I've also been reading a book by William Sinzer, Writing to Learn, that writing is an act of learning as well. By doing the actual writing, you train yourself to think in a more clearer way so that you can put your thoughts to paper and communicate them in as simple a way as possible.
Yeah, I think along these lines as well, even if you were to use large language models to be able to generate some of your text, being able to have actually a clear outline and goal is very important to start, because it could very easily lead you into a direction or train of thought that you didn't necessarily intend to take in the first place.
So I guess you're still at the use at your own peril kind of stage, but also valuing the human skills.
Yeah, I still do value the human skills quite a lot. I hope that doesn't make me sound too old-fashioned, but I also think that it's important to be able to incorporate these tools more and more into your work and also daily life, because it's going to be here for a long time to come and only become more powerful. So without adopting these types of tools, I think that you run the risk of really becoming outdated and slower with having an aversion to technology. And so I don't mean to sound technologically averse. It's just that I think for the learning process, as you mentioned, it's really important to still be able to maintain some of these skills and use AI as a tool to help you improve those skills instead of outsourcing all of your brain power to the AI.
No, definitely a very important message. And I think everyone needs to hear that and take that to heart, because, the human agency over the material, over the information, the knowledge, even though it's at your fingertips, I think we still need to be the judge of what we think is useful, what we want to use, and what we also especially think is correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we're going to embark on this experiment. And I guess, if we didn't have AI, it would also be one of thinking and writing and trying to explain things. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of your papers. Actually, it's one that we discussed on your main episode. So listeners, if you want to hear more about Denise's journey, go check out episode 34. I can highly recommend it. And we're going to look at that paper, which is about metal-doped microplastics. What we commonly see online is complicated concepts explained for different audiences. And that is essentially what you need to do when you're writing. You have to think of your audience, who you're going to write for, and how do you explain these concepts. You can, in an academic setting, explain it to experts, and often it involves the use of certain jargon that they know without having to then spend 3 sentences explaining what that means. So people often replace 3 sentences of explanations with a single word, and that becomes clear. But that's something the general public wouldn't understand. And so sometimes when you're communicating it to a broader audience, like in a magazine or in the news, for example, you need to simplify a lot of these concepts and explain it in different ways. So we're going to listen to 3 different versions of a summary of this paper, and we're going to use short summaries here. One tailored to experts in the field, the second one tailored to the general public, And because we love our experiments on this podcast. The third one, tailored to kids. So I generated 3 versions and I prompted NotebookLM each time with instructions. So for experts, explain the concepts as if you were teaching highly experienced researchers in the field of nanoplastics. So geared towards those who know the science already. The second one, the general public, explain the concepts as if you were teaching adults who don't know much about nanoplastics. Use accessible language, like in a news report or a magazine article. And the third one, to children, explain the concepts as if you were teaching children. Use fun and very simple language that children 5 years or older, well, around 5 years, can understand. Make it fun and entertaining as well, because I think kids' attention spans are also a bit short. So the full paper is titled Synthesis of Metal-Doped Nanoplastics and Their Utility to Investigate Fate and Behavior in Complex Environmental Systems. Authored by yourself and a few other co-authors, published in Nature Nanotechnology, volume 14 in April 2019, pages 362 to 368.
Very precise referencing.
Yes.
Very good.
Before we begin, give me a summary of this paper.
Yes. So when we think about the topic of nano and microplastics, either in the environment or in organisms, one main challenge that we have is how to accurately measure and characterize these particles in different systems. We have a lot of issues with taking these measurements and making sure that they're accurate and precise. And so this paper is trying to show a novel method to be able to measure them easier and faster using alternative techniques. The way that we did this is by synthesizing our own model materials that have a metal dopant inside, where we can measure the metal as a proxy for the plastic, really alleviating a lot of the challenges in the analytical chain to measure nano and microplastics. In this specific paper, we describe how we made one type of these particles. We have several with other papers, but this one in particular is with nanoplastics that are doped with palladium. And we used it in a specific case study in this paper to look at how the nanoplastics move in a simplified wastewater treatment plant system. We have also since used the particles in a number of different types of experiments of different scale and of different types of biological and environmental systems. So it'll also be interesting to see if and how the NotebookLM pulls in some of those other references, since as you mentioned, this publication was in 2019 in the world of science. That's relatively long ago. So it'd be also nice to see if and how the tools are bringing in some of the other information after we've actually written the paper.
And new context knowledge. Not entirely sure whether it will do that, but I'm curious to see, because it has been a while since we've had an episode on this mini-series. So let's see if any updates have been made to NotebookLM on that front as well. So before we begin, and I think we will cover this in descending order of difficulty, call it that. So we'll start with the experts, then we'll go for the general public, and then finally for the children.
I'm curious why you think this is the descending order of difficulty.
Oh, actually, that's an interesting point. Yeah, because it is often much harder to explain something to a 5-year-old. I guess to think of Richard Feynman, he pops up at the moment. And I guess that's one of, the accolades of doing good science, being able to communicate it to children.
Yeah. In this context, I also think a lot of the nuance for experts will be lost, of course, when explaining to children, but how much simplified this will be to see if it still has the essence of these difficult analytical challenges, or if it will move just towards plastic pollution is bad for the environment. So I wonder where it will make this line. I'm very curious.
You've changed my mind. So in order of increasing difficulty, we'll call it that. So yeah, what are your expectations other than the difficulty aspects? Or what are you hoping to hear from these summaries?
I think in terms of hopes, I don't have very many hopes. I'm more just curious than hopes in a way. I think that as mentioned, I'm quite curious to see where it makes the distinction of what is too technical, and I would anticipate that it gets more and more generic as it goes from expert to general audience to children, where if you were to take other manuscripts that were also in general on the topic of plastic pollution, if the children's episode would end up basically all sounding the same because they've become so simplified. So at which point does the nuance of the explicit study at hand really shine through, and when is it not? Because I think that this, even with my own experience in public speaking, I notice when I speak to different audiences, the nuance of my own work gets lost, and it becomes much more broad about the overall issue of plastic pollution and not about what I actually do personally as a scientist. So I would anticipate maybe it goes in that direction. I don't know if that's a hope or not, but it's more just a curiosity about if and how the tools also align with how I also feel that I end up having to explain the topic to different audiences.
So with that in mind, I think that gives us a very good guideline to follow in listening to this. But with that in mind, are you ready?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's go for it.
Okay, let's unpack this. The challenge with nanoplastics, as you know, it's intensifying. These environmental pollutants demand, well, innovative solutions. Today, we're really deep diving into a pivotal 2019 study that tackles the analytical limitations in tracking these incredibly tiny, ubiquitous particles. Our mission, explore this novel methodology from Mitrano and colleagues that enables really precise quantification, even in complex matrices.
Right, and what's so fascinating here, especially for anyone who's actually trying quantifying these things, is the analytical elusiveness of native nanoplastics.
That was a lot of jargon.
It's interesting that you say a lot of jargon because actually, from my ears as an expert in this field, and again, I guess this clip is meant to be for experts, I found a lot of generic keywords.
Oh, really?
So I didn't, things like intensifying, innovative solutions, but then you beg the question, innovative solution of what? For me, it lacked a little bit of the precision that an expert would actually need. So I found it a little bit generic.
Actually, jargon is the wrong word. I would say lots of long words with lots of syllables.
Well, yes, long words with lots of complex words, perhaps. Yeah, I think that there was also a lot of buzzwords that were in there, which is what I would also not necessarily expect for something that was targeted at experts. It seems that some of the words were also trying to catch the attention, which of course is good in any podcast. We want to catch people's attention as well. Yeah, so maybe we can also throw out some more buzzwords in there.
But not lose them in the process.
I think that it lacked a little bit of substance, personally.
So let's see if they can save themselves. They seem to be doing bad already, according to you.
You're dealing with very dilute concentrations, high natural backgrounds interfering. And frankly, we've had limited robust techniques. It raises a key question. How do we reliably study their fate?
Exactly. How do you track something you can barely see against a messy background?
Well, the solution presented here is quite elegant. Synthesizing nanoplastics with a chemically entrapped palladium tracer. It's a two-step emulsion polymerization. First, a polyacrylonitrile, or PAN, core containing the palladium. Then they add a cross-linked polystyrene shell.
A core shell structure. So the palladium is locked inside.
Precisely. That structure is key. It ensures minimal p-leaching. They measured less than 0.5% over 2 months.
So I think that they've become more precise. This is good.
They've lost me already.
I would say, so it was a little bit a longer excerpt that we had that time. I would say the first half of that excerpt was really quite nicely stated when it got into the whole core shell structure and exactly the types of polymers that were involved. Even for experts in the field, in experts meaning those studying nanoplastics and plastics pollution, that might also be a level of detail too much, perhaps. But I did like that they said I had a quite elegant solution.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They're very good at complimenting, I must say. Martha and Stuart, as we call them, they like to, bring in the humor and bring in the compliments. And, everyone to them in their eyes is a world-class researcher. So
yeah, well, that's of course good. I'm very complimented, of course. I'm a world-class researcher. But then that also begs the question, if they compliment every paper, not necessarily every publication is of high quality. So do you think that there is some distinction, or they're able to make a distinction about what is actually high quality research versus not high quality research, or just makes everything seem bright and shiny?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, actually. And I think it makes me curious about one of the new features of NotebookLM, which is a critical discussion, because that could be the option where you then force the AI to actually critique the work instead of go deep on it. Whereas I think a deep dive discussion, you have Martha and Stuart, who are very, very kind people. But I guess something that's worth exploring, perhaps in another episode. Let's see if they keep losing me or whether I can come back on track as well.
This makes palladium a genuinely conservative tracer. And crucially, it's detectable with high sensitivity by ICP-MS.
ICP-MS, okay. And that sensitivity, that's the breakthrough compared to older methods.
Absolutely. Its utility is profound. You get a particle number detection limit orders of magnitude lower than, say, fluorescent counterparts. And importantly, it demonstrates robust recovery even in those really complex matrices we mentioned. Think wastewater sludge.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting then. Applying it, the utility of these doped nanoplastics was tested rigorously in simulations.
Yes, in batch studies simulating municipal wastewater treatment plants, WWTPs, they wanted to see how these particles behave in that environment.
And what did they find? What are the key insights into their fate and transport there?
Two main things stood out. First, heteroaggregation. These nanoplastics show rapid, high affinity for clumping together with activated sludge flocks.
Heteroaggregation.
Uh-huh.
So they stick to the existing gunk very quickly.
Very quickly. Over 99% associated with the flocks within minutes.
The existing gunk.
That's a very technical term for you, right?
It's very technical.
Very technical.
But I can understand it.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that it is explaining it quite well. I mean, what I had missed a little bit from what we've heard so far is the contextualization of why this alternative approach was actually necessary. It did say a little bit that it's challenging to be able to measure these materials, but the level of detail that goes into our approach is really highly contrasted to the lack of the problem statement, in my opinion, at the beginning.
I did notice it was literally a sentence, I think.
Yeah.
The fate. We don't get it.
Yeah, but indeed, the fate is not even exactly what the paper is about. It's really more about the analytical tools that we're able to use. So I think that was a little bit missing.
It makes me wonder whether a short summary will have the opportunity to capture all that, or whether it's really up to chance when you generate it. I mean, we call them zero-shot generation. So I put it in and I generate it with a prompt and I take what comes out. So no option for refinement. But maybe if you do it 10 times and you review all 10 of them, one of them will probably have it.
So that's what actually you kind of answered my question in advance. Since you've had a little bit more experience, or at least time to play around with this than me, do you see a significant difference? And of course, significant is hard to define when we're talking about text like this, but do you see a significant difference between each generation that you would have?
I think in my experience with the episodes I've generated on the same material, you do see, in some cases, significant differences. Some focus more on certain aspects, whereas others focus on other aspects. So in preparation for one of the previous episodes where we threw in lots and lots of documents, I also vetted the information that came out of NotebookLM until I found the one that I think made sense. Because with many more documents, and this is one paper, but this paper also has many aspects, it needs to decide what to focus on. And I think that will change depending on the generation. So there's a bit of that pseudo stochasticity in there, even though the language model is trained. But hey, language can be expressed in many different ways.
This is true.
This is true. So let's see if they save that maybe towards the end of it, because they might have placed it there saying, so what?
Oh, is this foreshadowing?
No, I don't know. I'm also listening to this for the first time, so I'm as surprised as you.
That's significantly faster than typical hydraulic residence times in WWTPs. They bind almost immediately upon entering that environment.
Wow. Okay. And did the shape of the nanoplastic matter? I think they tested different morphologies.
They did, yes. Smooth versus a sort of raspberry-like shell. But interestingly, particle morphology showed no statistically significant difference on these removal rates via heteroaggregation.
So once they're in, they stick. It doesn't much matter what they look like.
Seems that way. And this leads directly to the second key finding, retention efficiency. Given that rapid association, it's maybe not surprising that over 99% of the spiked nanoplastics were retained in the sludge phase.
Over 99%, meaning very little gets out in the treated water.
Exactly. Less than 1% was detected in the supernatant, the effluent. Overall recovery in the system averaged 93 benignities 3%, which is excellent. And this recovery correlated directly with total suspended solids density gradients.
TSS. So basically, the more solids, the more nanoplastics trapped.
Why add them in?
It strongly implies that WWTPs are acting as significant sinks for nanoplastics. They're effectively removing them from the water column and concentrating them in the sludge.
I think we found out where the humans are not. I've never said WWTP.
Surely it takes longer to say WWTP than it does to say wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I think Where I could actually see such a tool coming into use is that if you've already read the paper and would like to maybe get a ground sense about if you've understood the main points, maybe this could help reiterate the main points. But I'm not necessarily sure somebody who's unfamiliar with the paper, even an expert in the field, would necessarily be able to follow what is going on. But of course, I know the paper very well, so that's very difficult for me to assess. And you're also not from the same field, so it's also difficult to see or appreciate how an expert in the field might be because you're also not an expert in this field.
That calls for an experiment.
Yeah.
Well, could be another paper.
Paper. I thought we were going for podcasts here, but paper, sure.
Let's finish off this version and then we'll see what the second version has to offer.
Right. So if we connect this all together, this whole metal-doped nanoplastic approach, it's like a crucial tool for right now.
Yes, I'd say it provides a vital bridge. It helps us understand
So what?
nanoplastic fate, transport, even potential biological interactions, at least until native analytical techniques mature enough for widespread use.
And this deep dive into the WWTP simulations really suggests that nanoplastics entering these plants predominantly exit via the sludge.
That's the strong implication, which brings us to a really critical, bigger picture question, one for you, the listener, perhaps to consider. If most nanoplastics end up concentrated in wastewater sludge, what are the full implications of how different countries manage that sludge? Think agricultural application versus incineration.
Right. Those different end-of-life pathways for the sludge could dramatically alter the environmental distribution.
Precisely. How does that affect the ultimate fate and potential exposure pathways for these persistent pollutants? It underscores the need for further dynamic pilot-scale studies to really capture the complexities in operational environments.
That was it.
All right. I did have some more of the so what at the end there, but I'm still interested about them, I think, focusing mostly on the fate aspects and environmental impacts, where I would consider this particular paper more about analytics. And I think that that was a little bit undercut in this. Some of the word choices I found also a bit awkward or not typically used in the field. They compared our metal-doped approach to native analytical tests. I've never heard what is a native analytical test before. I think maybe what they were trying to say was analytical tests for particles that are natively in the environment. Something like this. And these maybe seem like very small placements of word differences, but collectively, when you have many of these inaccuracies or things that are not quite right, I think it makes the whole understanding of the text a little bit more challenging.
That is true. And it can risk painting a completely different picture of what the study is about.
Indeed. It is true that we, made some predictions about how nanoplastics would behave and did some simple experiments. But I do think that they really overemphasized the environmental aspect compared to the analytical methodologies, which we were actually focusing on this paper.
Yeah. What I've noticed from generating different iterations of summaries from NotebookLM is that oftentimes the focus can shift. So had I done this again with the same prompt, I might have gotten one that focuses a lot more on the analytical aspects. But I think that pretty much signals that an expert, and especially the authors of the paper, if they want to use this, they need to vet the content and to make sure that it communicates what they want it to communicate.
Yeah, it's not to say necessarily things were wrong. I mean, I pointed out a few words and phrases that might not be explicitly correct. I don't think that it's wrong what it presented, but rather I would have personally put the emphasis elsewhere.
Yeah.
But who knows, maybe another reader, a natural reader of the paper, would have also put the emphasis on a different location than I would as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean it is the large language model that is quote unquote at fault. It could also be natural variations of any reader.
That's a very good point. Very interesting one too. But also scary at the same time because we're humanizing the LLM as well. It's not their fault.
Yeah, well, you caught me there.
Nah. But that was the expert version. Can't say that I fully followed everything, but I'm glad that I had you there to really go deep on where they missed out on things.
Good. Well, we'll see if you fare better for the next test cases.
Yeah, honestly, I hope so. Otherwise, I only have the kids' version to save me in the end. Are you ready for the next version?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's go for it.
Welcome to the deep dive. We cut through the noise to bring you insights that, might just surprise you. Today, we're tackling something you can't see, a kind of invisible challenge, nanoplastics. These are incredibly small plastic bits, almost like ghosts in our environment. Really hard to find, really hard to track. So our mission here is to look at how scientists are now finally getting a handle on this, a really clever new method. And we'll explore what they found about where these things end up,
people.
Especially
Martha and Stuart are my best friends.
Drains.
Yeah, and it's a big deal because this isn't just academic curiosity. It's about figuring out the journey of a pollutant that's pretty much everywhere.
I liked this introduction a lot better. Yeah, I think that it contextualizes things more succinctly and more completely than in the previous version.
And in the bigger context and I guess in a more visual way.
Yeah, I liked it.
What I've noticed though, and this was also the case in the previous recording, is that once again, our trend is proving itself true. Martha's the one doing all the explaining and Stuart's just there for comic relief. Well, he just gives his, his opinion, his 2 cents every now and then.
Nanoplastics, you see, they come from, well, a couple of places. Sometimes they're made small on purpose. Think tiny beads in old face scrubs, maybe. But mostly, they're secondary. Bigger plastic stuff just breaking down, fragmenting over time, like bits shedding off car tires every time it rains, washing into the sewers, that kind of thing. The huge problem, the real headache, has always been actually finding them in, say, wastewater. They're just too tiny, often too diluted. Old methods just couldn't cope.
Okay, so hunting a ghost, basically. How did they get around that? It sounds like they needed something completely new.
They love the ghost analogy.
They did. And it was pretty inventive. They basically engineered special nanoplastic particles that had a sort of hidden tag inside them, a metallic fingerprint chemically locked in.
Like a tiny GPS tracker built right in. That's clever.
Exactly. And the metal they chose was key. Palladium.
It's like a story unfolding.
Yeah, it's like so much suspense. Well, I think some of the analogies are a little cheesy. As you mentioned, the ghost thing is a little bit over the top, and maybe GPS is not quite exactly what we're doing. I think it paints a pretty good picture. Still focused more on the environmental impacts than on our analytical methods. But that was also what I had anticipated as we go to different levels of complexity for this. But I think that it does quite a good job and is, at least to me, more understandable than the previous version. Yeah. I'm not sure how you find it.
Well, to me, definitely. So, I mean, they're about to get into more detail here, so we'll see if I can follow as well. But I think that's where the analytical technique now will be the challenge for them to explain in a simpler way.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. And, well, I mean, Halloween was only just a few weeks ago, so I guess the ghost analogy is justifiable.
Okay. We'll give it to them. We'll give it to them.
It's quite rare naturally, which is perfect. It means it doesn't just sort of vanish into the background noise. It stands out. Plus, scientists already have really good, super sensitive ways to measure tiny amounts of metals. So they could add these tagged plastics to, say, a water sample and be confident they could find them again without other stuff interfering.
Okay, so palladium was the key. Did they have to do anything special to keep it locked in?
Yeah, they were smart about that too. They used a core shell design. Yep. Think of it like a tiny pit inside a peach. The palladium was in the core, a polyacrylonitrile core, technically, and then coated with a polystyrene shell. This shell kept the metal fingerprint safely inside, crucial for making sure the tracking was accurate, didn't want it leaking out.
Brilliant. A unique, non-leaky fingerprint.
Yeah, I think that they're actually really spot on. I think that they have also brought out a lot of the elements that I would have anticipated in the expert version, which was the unique fingerprint, low background, environmentally rare metal. I think these are really key aspects of why we did this approach. And it wasn't really clear in the expert version exactly why we made these choices. Maybe in the expert version, they were anticipating the listener to be able to connect the dots a little bit more. I'm not necessarily sure if you're
Interesting point.
If you're able to do that without it. So I think that they relied a lot more on people connecting the dots in the first one.
Making them think, well, if these experts can connect the dots, then we can focus on specific aspects and leave the rest out.
Yeah, but I don't think every expert in the field of nanoplastic or plastic pollution would be able to connect the dots, but they've more clearly outlined in this version. I think that some mixture between the two would have been also appropriate for the expert audience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely following this much better. So, yeah, let's see what the fingerprint thing does.
So, armed with these trackable nanoplastics, where did they test them out?
They went straight for the municipal wastewater treatment plants. WWTP.
Oh, no.
No, it's back.
We were hoping.
If they say for this for the children, Martha and Stuart are fired.
These plants are like the major crossroads, right? Connecting our homes and cities to rivers and lakes. The big question was, do nanoplastics just wash straight through these plants, or do the plants actually catch them?
And what did they find out? Did the plants work?
Well, what they found is actually pretty significant. It changes how we think about wastewater treatment and plastics. They mimicked the main biological part of the treatment. It's called the activated sludge process, basically where microbes do the cleaning. And the results were, well, really clear. Almost immediately, within like 10 minutes, most of the tagged nanoplastics latched onto the solids in the sludge.
In general, yes. I think that they've overstated what we actually found in our experimental results, that we made some big discovery of how this would happen. I think there were also other studies before that showed similar trends. So I don't think what we found with our case study was necessarily groundbreaking. It's more how we were able to measure this and having this approach be a foundation for being able to answer more difficult questions in the future. So maybe in some cases they overstated the novelty of the explicit case study that we used. And so this is also maybe harks back to one of the other questions or points that I brought up earlier, is if you had a study which indeed was not novel or groundbreaking in any way, if the NotebookLM would make it sound more important than it actually was. So maybe this is also a little bit of a bias, making everything sound more exciting than it actually is.
I guess err on the side of complimenting rather than critiquing, and then NotebookLM knows it doesn't have to deal with, I guess, customer feedback.
I guess, but I think that that's a poor customer feedback, because I think as a scientist, if you're actually using this as a tool, or even as a student, this is part of the critical thinking that can be lost. If everything seems like the biggest breakthrough, and if everything seems very positive, that is really hard to then actually say where to draw the line, that some things don't actually work. To be fair, that's oftentimes how a lot of scientific papers are written anyways, where you focus on the parts of the experiment that has been performed well and you get good analysis. Negative results aren't often published. So maybe it is also reflecting how scientists oftentimes write about their own work as well. But
it's
still,
very possible, actually.
Using these tools, it's very then hard to distinguish probably if something didn't work out very well.
And yet another piece of evidence as to why critical thinking skills are going to be far more important going into the future, because then, as the human listening to this, we'll be able to scrutinize this better. Yeah. But much more accessible vocabulary, definitely following. Pity about the acronyms. We both were hoping, but let's see what happens. Got a bit more left for this because we're way over halfway point, but let's see how they finish this off and then move on to the kids' version.
Latched onto the solids so they didn't stay in the water.
Exactly. They stuck to the clumps of organic stuff, the gunk, that the plant separates out from the water being treated.
It's very visual.
Not that I want to visualize wastewater treatment plants so closely, but there you go.
Wow, that quick. So what does that mean overall? How much actually got caught?
When they tallied it all up, it was over 99%. More than 99% of the nanoplastics ended up in that sludge layer, which means less than 1% actually got through into the clean water, the effluent that goes back into the environment. And they managed to recover, on average, over 93% of the tagged plastic they put in, which tells us the method itself is really reliable.
Okay, over 99% retention. That sounds pretty good. Like the treatment plants are doing their job incredibly well for these tiny particles.
It is good news in a way. Previous studies hinted that larger microplastics get caught well, but nanoplastics were always the big unknown because they're so much harder to detect. People suspected a lot might be slipping through. This research suggests, no, actually, the plants are surprisingly effective even for these tiny ones. It fills a big gap in our understanding.
Right. But is there a but? If nearly everything is ending up in the sludge, what happens then? Where does the sludge go?
That's the crucial next question, isn't it? This research is vital because it shows WWTPs are basically concentrating nanoplastics into the sludge. But the story doesn't end there. What happens to that sludge depends entirely on where you are. In some places, that sludge is treated and then spread on farmland as a fertilizer.
It's like the next Mission Impossible happening.
I'm as puzzled as you. This has never happened that Stuart changes character.
It's seen as recycling nutrients. In other places, it might be incinerated, burned. So the big question this leaves us with, the thing for you to think about, is what happens long term? What are the environmental consequences of these nanoplastics now concentrated in sludge, ending up either potentially in our soils and food chain or dispersed differently through incineration? Where do these tiny plastic invaders with their metal tags finally settle in our world?
Wow. What was that?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's like, stay tuned and go read the paper. And it's like the call to action, but really like an action movie.
Yeah, totally.
I'm speechless. But okay, coming back to this, much more accessible language. I think trying to round it off. Not because of that action movie sequence, I got caught off guard at the end. But I think the wrapping up, really going through the so what after that visual storytelling, clarifying terminology by explaining it very quickly. I think they've done pretty well at that.
Yeah, I think that it was a pretty good result. I mean, also keeping in mind that it's completely automated. I mean, this is just really amazing to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Stuart, I'm a bit scared now. So the moment we've been waiting for, the third version. I mean, before we start, how would you describe nanoplastics to children?
I would say that...
To a 5-year-old.
Yeah, gotcha. So I would say, so we can think about when we use different items every day, like a water bottle that you have. This is a really big piece of plastic.
Yeah.
But then we can also have smaller pieces as well. If the plastic is in the environment, or if we break it or tear it, we get smaller and smaller pieces. And so when we start to think about nanoplastics, this is if you tear 10,000, 100,000 times your plastic water bottle, and then you have a really small piece.
That's
but
a
that
cool
piece
way.
is still there.
Yeah, that's a cool way of describing it. The reason I ask is because I obviously had to check the start of the episode and just to make sure that the prompt kind of worked. So here's what Martha and Stuart said.
Hey there, super curious friends. Ever thought about things that are so tiny you can't even see them?
Like smaller than a little sprinkle.
Exactly. Or even smaller. Well, guess what? Today we're doing a super fun deep dive into invisible plastic dust.
Ooh. Sounds mysterious.
It is. They're actually called nanoplastics. Super tiny plastic pieces.
Super tiny plastic pieces.
Yeah. I think that the visualization that stuck with me was this like plastic dust. I think that was a nice thing for children. Yeah. Plastic dust.
Super, extra super for added effect and attention.
And where do they come from?
Well, sometimes bigger plastic things, like maybe an old toy, break into teeny-weeny bits. Or, get this, sometimes they're made super tiny for things like special grown-up lotions or shampoos.
Ah, right. And, for a long time.
Well, you got to be careful with grown-up lotions. What is the rating on this podcast?
Scientists were scratching their heads. They didn't know where these tiny plastic bits went.
Because they're so hard to find.
Exactly. It was like trying to find invisible glitter scattered everywhere. Imagine trying to find that.
It reminds me of those childhood movies that when a grown-up watches it, there's so many nuances that they pick up, but the children don't.
Yeah. This is adult grape juice.
And it's actually, it's what it is, right? But yeah, I think they're talking around the topic and giving it many different visual descriptions that I think is, I think it's there to awaken the curiosity in the child. At least that's my interpretation of it.
Yeah, and they also give age-appropriate examples with the sprinkles, with the glitter.
The grown-up lotion.
Yeah.
But yeah, using words that also, I guess, spark emotions, teeny weeny.
Yeah.
The double adjectives, the double superlatives. Well, super. Yeah. So let's see how they get into the analytics here then.
Whoa. Okay, so our mission today, our big adventure, is to figure out how some really clever scientists found this invisible plastic.
Super sleuth scientists.
Totally. And we want to know what happens when these tiny plastics go for a ride through a special place. Let's call it the water cleaning factory.
All right, let's dive in.
Okay, first up, the scientists' super secret tool. This idea was genius, like POP. A light bulb went on.
What do they do?
Oh, pop. I was like, I was just so looking for the acronym.
They decided to put a special little secret tag inside the invisible plastic bits, like a tiny, tiny bell they could listen for.
A tiny bell.
A tiny
cool.
bell.
What was it made of?
It was made of a little bit of special safe metal. It's called palladium. Nothing yucky, just a little helper.
Oh, palladium. Yes, that's a clever choice. Because that secret tag, that little bell, it stays safely tucked right inside the plastic.
It doesn't fall out.
Nope, doesn't come out.
Yeah. So for children, I don't think that they need to know that it's palladium. I don't think that they need to know any of that sort of aspect.
But it's a secret bell.
It's a secret bell.
Ring, ring.
Yeah, they're sleuthing for the secret bell. I mean, yeah, I appreciate that it tries to still incorporate. And of course, I've been saying this whole time, of course, where are the analytics? Where are the analytics? But children need a different type of explanation. You know, how do you find your toy? You know, like how do you go search for your toy? They don't care that there's palladium. They don't know what a metal is or if a metal is safe or unsafe. I think that they go a little bit too much into detail in some aspects.
Certainly entertaining to listen to.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find all these nuances that they're throwing in, all these references as well. But yeah, super genius, super sleuth.
Oh, I didn't hear the super genius one. Thanks for pointing that one out again.
I don't know if it was super genius, but it was definitely genius.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take genius as well. That's fair.
All good.
And it helps the scientists sort of hear or, find where the plastic goes, even if there's only a teeny tiny bit.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like a special tracker. Much, much better than other tags they tried before, which sometimes disappeared or got lost. This little bell lets them follow the plastic.
That is incredible. Okay, so they've got their special tagged plastics ready for an adventure.
To the water cleaning factory.
Exactly. Now,
that's cute.
when we wash our hands or take a bath or flush the toilet, all that water zips away from our homes.
Yeah. Goes down the drain.
And it goes to a place called a wastewater treatment plant. Think of it like a giant cleaning machine for all the water in town.
Oh my God, no acronym.
No acronym.
We were on edge here.
Okay, a giant water cleaner. Got it.
So the big question the scientists had was this. Would those tiny invisible plastics just float out with the clean water at the end?
Or would they get stuck?
Yeah. Would they stick to all the yucky, dirty stuff that the giant cleaning machine collects?
The teeny tiny plastics with the yucky, giant, dirty stuff. Wow. We should have a teeny tiny count or super count.
Yeah. We can get them a thesaurus for Christmas.
But very visual again.
Yeah. I think that it's pretty good.
But also very whimsical. Like I've got really whimsical pictures in my head.
But then I wonder if science should always be explained so whimsical to children. Yes, it's made for children and you need to capture their attention. But children can also be curious and also be interested in science. And then I wonder what this paints as a picture of how scientists work when such whimsical terminology, I can barely call it terminology, wording, language is used in children's versions, because I think that children can and should still understand a little bit more than this really fairy tale version of science.
But I guess at what age do you start training them? At what age do they absorb that? I mean, they say children's brains can absorb language pretty quickly, like a sponge, when they're very young. I think up to, I don't know the exact age, but it was like within the single digits. So hence why some children can learn languages really quickly if they're in a multilingual environment.
Yeah, well, that's about the language itself and speaking multiple languages. But I'm not saying to use very technical scientific terms. But even when I went on a little hike with my niece, we tried to make it a little bit like a science hike. And so we went and first made an observation. And then I had my little field notebook. We wrote in the observation. And then I said, okay, we see this observation. What is your hypothesis? What do you think happened or is going on to make this observation possible? So she saw some red rocks in the forest and she said, I think that the sun was beating on them really hard and then they turned red because they're so hot. And I was like, ooh, good hypothesis. Like now what can we do as an experiment to test our hypothesis? And she said, we can keep one rock in the shade under the tree and one rock in the sun. And she was only 6 or 7 at the time, but we could still do these kind of science hikes, of course, very simple. The hypothesis was not necessarily a correct one, but that's also the point about being able to see an observation, formulate a question. And she was really into it. It was the longest hike that she's ever been on because she was so excited to go look at the next observation and write in the science notebook.
Very cool.
So I think that children are able to incorporate this a lot more than this whimsical,
teeny weeny
saying,
super duper
let's
explanation.
on. Yeah.
Well, let's see how we're halfway through it. So let's see how they continue with this and whether we'll have more teeny weenies and super supers.
The sludge. Okay, so how did they find out?
Well, they did these really cool mini experiments, like playing with science in little cups.
Fun.
Totally. They took their tagged nanoplastics, the ones with the little bell, and put them into containers with some of that dirty stuff, the sludge from the real water cleaning factory.
Okay, so tagged plastic
What's a real
meets
water
the sludge.
factory?
Then what?
Then they mixed it all up, but gently,
But gently.
like stirring a big pot of
Careful,
soup
Careful.
very slowly.
Right, to see if they'd stick together.
Exactly. And you won't believe what they found. It was amazing.
Tell me.
After they mixed it and let all the dirty
He's on the
stuff
edge of his
settle
seat.
down to the bottom, they checked. And more than 99
Yeah.
out of every 100 tiny plastic pieces
Yeah.
stuck.
Interesting way
They
of,
stuck right onto the dirty stuff.
Describing percentage.
So like almost all of them?
Almost all of them. Hardly any of the invisible plastics floated out with the clean water part. They really, really loved sticking to that dirty stuff. Scientists call it activated sludge.
Oh my God.
That is a huge discovery, over 99%. So what does that actually mean?
Activated sludge, no child or adult. Most adults do not care what activated sludge is.
At least they didn't say WWTP.
Well, yes. Okay, we'll give them credit. They didn't say WWTP, so that's good.
But I'm starting to get confused by the double words, whether it's the LLM actually hallucinating or whether it's on purpose. Really, really tiny, super, super.
Yeah. I think that the first half, like with a lot of the visualization, was really good. This, I think, tries to add in too many complications.
Yeah. Well, maybe they heard you and they're trying to use terminology now.
Ah, okay. Well,
But once again, this proves Stuart is literally just there to provide the comic relief and I guess the anticipation and excitement.
Why is that so important?
Yeah, what's the big picture?
Well, the big picture is it means that in these big water cleaning factories, most of those tiny invisible plastics stay with the dirty stuff, the sludge.
Okay.
Instead of going out into our rivers or lakes or oceans with the cleaned water, which is really, really good news for all the fishies and plants living there.
Oh, definitely. Good news for the fishes. And then that dirty stuff, the sludge with the plastic stuck to it. What happens to that?
Good question. Well, that sludge can sometimes be used in special ways. Like sometimes it's put on farm fields to help plants grow bigger and stronger.
If the rules say it's okay, right?
Exactly. If the country's rules allow it. Or sometimes it can be safely burned away. So knowing the plastic sticks helps scientists figure out exactly where it ends up.
That makes so much sense. So the next time you see some plastic, maybe a bottle or a toy, remember there's also invisible plastic dust.
Okay.
And remember those super
Scaring
clever
the children.
scientists with their secret tags, their tiny bells?
Help it keep track of it all.
Yeah, helping us understand how to keep our awesome planet clean and sparkly.
It really makes you think, though, doesn't it?
About what?
Well, if most of these tiny plastics stick really well to that dirty stuff, that sludge from the water cleaning factory, where does that sludge actually go in the end? After the factory. And what does that mean for the tiny plastic stuck to it?
Ooh, that is something interesting to think about. Where does the sludge go?
Maybe it's meant as a test for the children?
Maybe. I don't know. I think children, like science programs, sometimes do that. They explain something and at the end they have a quiz.
Oh, yeah.
But I also know from previous episodes that NotebookLM can butcher the takeaway in some iterations. So it could be either. I think it's the latter. So 3 different versions, 3 different sides of Martha and Stuart's character, but pretty much similar behaviors as we've seen in the past.
Maybe 4 for Stuart.
Yeah, maybe 4. Actually, the action one is a new one for me. But what do you think overall?
Yeah, I think that it did a pretty good job. I mean, I guess as was obvious through listening to the podcast, option 2 for the general audience, I think hit home the most and was the most complete and accessible, probably not only for general audiences, but probably for many scientists that are not explicitly in the direct field.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it went pretty well. It's always hard to judge because, of course, I know the work well, but I heard enough discrepancies in this that I would then question how it would fare on a topic that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so when you think, okay, maybe it was, I'm totally making a random guess. I did not take so many close notes, but maybe 60, 70% correct. That's not so high.
It's not very high. Maybe to roughly understand it and to pique your curiosity to go into the material.
Yeah, if it's used for this way, yes. But then again, it goes back to how are people using the tool?
Exactly. I think if someone wants to start, research in microplastics and they listen to this summary, I think the most important advice we can give them is go and read the actual paper and make sure you scrutinize what you heard and what you're actually reading, and build the understanding from what you're reading.
This is true, but I could also imagine that if you go to a very specific specialty article like ours, it would be hard to scrutinize because you are very new to the field.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's difficult. So I think that in combination with reading and listening to see if you've gotten the main points, it can be a useful tool.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it still harks back to critical thinking being extremely important, and that we need to keep honing the critical thinking skills. In terms of the nuance, you did mention that as a topic that you'll probably see degrade over time. I thought that it seemed like the structures were similar across all of them, and that they sort of covered the same kind of content across all three, just in very different ways.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So it didn't seem like it lost the plot at all, other than the double words in the children's version, which at some point, But I'm so glad that it did not use the wastewater treatment plant acronym in the last version.
And for the children, yes. Yeah, spare the children.
So Martha and Stuart keep their job.
Yeah, they're allowed to keep their job for now.
No, that's good. Believability, if you didn't know this was AI, what would you have thought?
Oh, in terms of the actual voice.
And just the way it's put together.
Yeah, it seems a bit jokey, It doesn't seem like a very serious... We have a very serious discussion right now on a real live podcast, of course, right? But I think that it's clear that it was generated. All right, of course, maybe I'm biased, but it seems a little bit jokey and soft. I wouldn't necessarily trust this as a very strong source, just by the way that it is spoken.
Yeah, either way, an interesting experiment that I've always wanted to get into, and I'm glad that we finally did it with very interesting insights.
Yeah.
What do you believe is the future of AI? You mentioned earlier at the start that I think it's important that people get a bit of an idea of what it is and maybe understand how to best use it. But I guess what are your general thoughts? What would you like to see in future?
Oh, this is a really big question. I think it's hard to know what you don't know. I have to just honestly admit that I'm not a very active AI user, and I'm not a very techie person in that regard. So it's hard for me to envision what possibilities there might be. So maybe it sounds too passive to be just kind of along for the ride, but it's hard for me to envision what capabilities there really are in a lot of different domains. So I think that these sort of questions are also better left for experts in those fields about how and where AI can be used.
Yeah, I guess we'll leave it to the experts, but I myself definitely curious as to what else you can do with NotebookLM and how it's going to evolve in future. As for this mini-series, we only have one episode left after this, after which I just passively follow NotebookLM's development. But Denise, it's been fantastic reconnecting in a different city and going through this experiment. So thank you for joining me on the mini-series.
Yeah, and thanks for taking the trip out here to Lausanne. I hope we can catch up again soon.
Definitely. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into this mini-series. And if you're interested in how we did the experiment, especially the exact prompts, you can look up the show notes as well as the actual paper to understand what we did with NotebookLM. And do check out the other episodes as well as the regular episodes on the Grand Challenges podcast.
If you like this episode or the show in general, follow it on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts from to be notified of the latest release as soon as it becomes available. Check out the show notes and many other episodes over at petermbach.com/podcast or join the LinkedIn group and share your thoughts.
The podcast's intro and outro song for this mini-series is called Funky Fortune by Danny Shields.
Stay tuned for our next episode in this mini-series to find out more about how AI may or may not tackle the grand challenges